Raise your hand if you are retired and you want to earn more money. Now, obviously, I can't see if you're raising your hand, but as you can see, I've got my hand up. As a matter of fact, I got my hand way up. Now, recently I decided I was going to get off the retirement sideline. I wanted to look for a business to buy because I love the thrill of building a business. But yeah, I also want to earn more money. And if you're watching this video, well, I imagine that you want to earn more money too. So to help me, well, I turned to Mike Blake for advice about valuing a business. Now, Mike's a man whose name carries serious weight in the world of business valuations. And in this video, Mike, he's the CEO of High Score Strategies. Well, he shares smart, practical advice that every buyer needs to hear. And that includes what to look for, what to avoid, and how to spot real opportunity. Now, with decades of experience, Mike delivers cold, hard facts. He doesn't pull any punches. He gives lots of wisdom that even seasoned entrepreneurs like me truly value. Welcome to Over 50 TV, Mike. I'm very glad to have you here with us today.
Hi, Lou. Thanks for having me.
The first question I have for you is, how do you help people sell their businesses?
So I think I help people sell their businesses because most sellers have never bought or sold a business before. And in most, not many, but not most, in many transactions, the seller's at a disadvantage. Buyers have often bought many businesses. In fact, if they're private equity, that is their job, is to buy businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So they have an experiential and knowledge advantage over most sellers who likely are doing it for the first time ever. And I'll be the first to admit that selling a business is not necessarily rocket science. But if you've never been through it before, it's very hard to navigate, especially under the pressure of selling what is likely the most important asset in your financial portfolio. So in effect, a lot of sellers are taking a knife to a gunfight when they're negotiating with buyers. And my job is to kind of level the playing field.
Now, before we go on, I want to thank Career Fitter for sponsoring this video. Career Fitter offers a career aptitude test that I believe is second to none. If you're somebody out there, you want to find a second or third career that fits your skills, your personality, and your interests, well, then you're going to want to check out Career Fitter. I've got a link in the description box for their free Career Fitter career aptitude test. What's the most important thing that you can tell somebody who comes to you and says, hey, I'm going to retire, I'm looking at selling my business? I mean, what do you do? What's the first step you take?
The first step I take is the hardest, which is I make an assessment as to whether I think the business has any value at all. The sad fact of the matter is that many businesses do not have any value because the owner is so embroiled in the business that they don't know that what they really have is a high stress, high risk job. And they're selling a job, they're not selling a business. And in fact, I took a call yesterday from somebody outside of Atlanta that wanted to sell their business, and they were hoping I might appraise the business, and I certainly could have, but I had to tell the person, based on what you're telling me, yeah, I don't know that your business has a lot of value. And in his particular case, he had an employee that was interested in buying the business and kind of paying him out over time because he just wanted to be a business owner. And I said, look, that's your best bet. So the first step I do is triage, which is does this business have a lot of value or not? Because I have a mentality or a belief system that I don't want to take out somebody's appendix if it doesn't need to be taken out.
Sure.
I certainly don't want to take out the appendix if they're having a heart attack. And sometimes what you find is somebody comes to me and their business is having a heart attack, and it's like, let's slow down here for a second. Selling your business is not the most important thing. It may not even be realistic. So let's figure out what that conversation should be.
Give me an example of a business that isn't worth anything.
And I can go back to this phone calls, real world stuff. This guy sounded like a very nice guy, sort of, older Southern gentleman with the drawl and the congeniality, and he's tired of being in the business. So he's tired of being in the business because the business was him, and to run a business, he was making less than $100,000 a year. Well, who wants to, and he'd have to replace himself. Whoever came in and took over the business would have to replace that role. Well, who's going to pay somebody for an $85,000 a year job that's high stress and high risk? that's just not a marketable asset. And it gives me no pleasure to say that to somebody, but I'm saving them a lot of time and heartache and fees, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
in trying to invest in an activity that just is not likely to become useful. So, when a business is not profitable, it's not going to be worth a whole lot,
Right.
especially if it's not profitable after you kind of account for what the owner needs to make just to be compensated properly for the effort. Now, if the owner also is the center of the business, they bring all the sales, they have all the relationships,
Mm-hmm.
there is no business. There's a commercial platform that happens to be supportive of this individual who is now working for their business, but the business owns that person. That person doesn't own the business.
So you're saying the best thing that person could do is sell it to an employee or someone who maybe a customer who comes in and loves the idea of being self-employed in that particular business.
Yeah, because then you're not selling a financial asset.
Mm-hmm.
You're selling an idea, you're selling a lifestyle. And I'm not qualified to appraise an idea or a lifestyle. That's what psychologists do. That's what leadership coaches do. That's what the Simon Sinek's of the world do.
Yeah.
That's not what I can do. I can't measure that because it's not a financial transaction.
So what is a guy like that? We're just kind of stick on this person for a second. That he wants to retire. I'm assuming it's a guy. He wants to retire. He's going to sell his business to somebody. More than likely, it's going to have to be owner financed. I'm assuming. Maybe
Yep,
I'm wrong, but I'm thinking it's got to be owner financed. And that guy's going to
you're
want
right.
in that business retire with basically nothing. That's pretty much what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, it gives me no pleasure. It gives me no pleasure to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, again, I do think I'm doing that person a service by kind of telling them the truth that a lot of people won't. A lot of people will be happy to take their money and do a business valuation or do their accounting or do their legal documents when none of that stuff matters.
Okay.
You know, you mentioned something in passing that I want to come back to because I think it's a really important point. You made a remark about a person who works in the business 20, 30 years
Yeah.
only to find out that it's worth nothing, right? And the tone of your voice is appropriate, which is you're somewhat incredulous. Like, how could that possibly be?
Oh yeah.
But the hard, cold reality of finance is that sweat equity is worth zero. I've not met a single person or company or investor that pays a dime for sweat equity.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole notion of sweat equity, it's a nice construct. It's an ideology, but it's not an asset. And and in financial transactions, people who are intelligent and knowledgeable and discerning pay for assets. Sweat equity is not an asset.
So when you're talking about assets, are you talking about like a durable, like or let's just say real estate? Are you talking about I'm assuming you're talking about equipment, stuff like that. Is that what you mean? Asset?
Well, for instance, now we have to be a little bit careful because there's sort of the accounting we call GAAP balance sheet,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's an economic balance sheet. A GAAP balance sheet is going to say you have assets like accounts receivable, inventory, cash that generally doesn't go on the sale, real estate, machinery, equipment, all that good stuff. GAAP does not recognize easily assets such as patents, know-how, trade secrets, customer lists, reputation, data. That's a big one that is often overlooked. So there needs to be something on the economic balance sheet. Business processes, for
Mm-hmm.
example, those don't show up on a balance sheet, but they are the assets that comprise the value narrative that allows a transaction to take place.
You did mention the a mailing list doesn't has no value. Is that did I hear that correctly?
No, what I meant to say is the mailing list is not recognized on an accounting balance sheet,
Uh-huh.
but it is recognized on a sort of economic balance sheet.
Okay.
mailing lists, data, patents, trade secrets, proprietary processes, in some cases, vendor relationships, um, social media accounts. Those for sure have value. They're traded every day.
Hmm.
It's just accounting. If you look for those on a typical balance sheet, like somebody's QuickBooks or
Yeah.
even the audited financial statements of Apple, you're not going to find them, but they exist. And those are the things that ultimately people pay for, that buyers pay for. But it ain't your sweat equity. It ain't the fact that you work 20 or 30 years. The seller's thinking, I'm really sorry that you worked that hard to build something of no value, but that's what happened. And it's not my job to fix that.
No, no, it's not. But I guess what I'm thinking of, and I'll just maybe create an imaginary business here. I'm thinking about a shoe repairman in my old neighborhood.
Yeah.
So he's got people that come in every day. I mean, literally every single day. He repairs their shoes. He's been building that business up for 15, 20 years. It's just him and his assistant. Actually, it was his wife, the person I'm talking about, who helped him in the business. He ends up passing away. His wife is running the business. She wants to sell it. Does that business have any value?
Well, you got to tell me how profitable it is.
Well,
So
that's yeah.
if that shoe sale business, let's say the shoe sale business makes, for round numbers, $100,000 a year
Hmm.
before compensating the owners. Okay. Now the owners take all $100,000 out. And you and I both know $100,000 is, it's not that much income anymore.
Hmm.
It used to be, but in many American cities, $100,000 is not easy to make a living off of. So if I'm going to buy that, if I buy that shoe repair business, okay, as the new owner, I need to do one of two things. I either need to replace the seller who passed away, who then can be the cobbler and can repair the shoes,
Hmm.
and I need to replace that for somebody who is willing to work for a lot less than $100,000 a year. Okay, and then I can, whatever's left over. Let's say you hire that person for $80,000. There's a $20,000 profit. That $20,000 profit after replacing the seller is where the financial value lies.
I see.
Now, if I'm the buyer, let's say I'm the buyer and I'm going to go in, I already know how to repair shoes. Okay, so I'm going to do that. But if I could work down the street for another shoe place or just for any place, but my skill set allows me to work for $140,000, why would I work in my own business for $100,000? When in fact I've got the hassle of running a business, I have the uncertainty of the income, and I have the potential liability. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
So it's not that the shoe business itself is a bad business. It's, you got to tell me how profitable it is, and is it profitable enough that somebody can fill the role that the owner had in delivering on the business service,
Hmm.
and there's still money left over. That money left over is where the value of the business is.
In this economic climate, what types of businesses or companies are you finding get the highest valuations?
Yeah, so we're in a time right now where it's about profit and not growth. Um, during the up until for about 10 years, up until the end of the pandemic, growth stories were fairly easy to sell. Um, you can't do that right now. Now the pendulum will swing back; it always has. But I have to say the pendulum's been stuck on profitability for longer than I can remember. I'm going to be 55 next month.
Hmm.
I can't remember a period of time where people were so focused on profit this long. So people ask me, where should I be investing, growth or profit? Within a millisecond, I'm telling people profit. Do not grow your business unless you can do so profitably, because you're cutting your own throat. In most cases, there's some tech businesses where that's different, but it really is bottom line profit. And then number two is, how much can you de-risk the business? And how much can you provide assurance to the buyer that that profit's going to be there 1 year, 2 years, 5 years from now? That's what the market's buying.
What do you tell us a guy? Let's say he's about to retire. He's got investments. He's got some cash. He wants to retire from his job because he wants to be his own boss. And I get this a lot here at Over 50 TV. Folks will literally comment, send me an email. Lou, I want to start my own thing. I'm tired of working for somebody else. I want to start a business. I'm 55, 60 years old. I've got 100 grand. I've got a couple $100,000. What would you tell them about starting a business? And then what would you tell them what kind of business to start if you concluded that they should be, yeah, go ahead and start a business?
Okay. So my criteria in that case would be the following. One is that the business has to be, if you're starting a business, that business has to have a very clear, rapid path to cash profitability. If you're of retirement age, unless you have extraordinary high net worth, you simply cannot afford for the business to become a money pit. So you have got to go into capitalist pig mode. Okay. If that business can't generate cash profit, you're out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you have to think like Google here, fail fast.
Yeah.
If it turns out that you made a bad bet, don't live with a bad bet month after month when the thing is not working. You literally walk into the business day one with a metaphorical loaded gun with one bullet, so that at some point, if that business is just not working out, you're going to put a bullet in the back of the head of that business and you're going to turn it off and walk away. Okay. That's number one. Number two, only invest in something in a business that you already know extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that age, if you do have a financial setback, it's tough to recover. But number two, if you're 65, it's not that you can't learn something new.
Mm-hmm.
It's that you've accumulated 65 years of wisdom and knowledge. Why would you not apply that asset into such an important financial undertaking? If you have a lifelong career in the restaurant business and now you're going to make an investment in artificial intelligence, that doesn't make any sense to me. You should still be in some way connected with the food service business.
Mm-hmm.
A great way for people to lose money quickly is to invest in something they don't already understand. And then the third is, invest in a business that either does not require a lot of capital, or B, can leverage someone else's capital. Right? And to some extent, we call that scalability. But make a business that can scale, again, without you having to be the sole source of funding and your own capital doing the heavy lift.
Where do you find a business like that?
I think the first place I would look is franchises.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when I say franchises, a lot of people think, well, I don't want to own a Burger King.
Yeah.
Well, and I have, by the way, I hardly do any franchise valuations. I don't broker franchises.
Mm-hmm.
This is in no way enriching me as far as I know. But franchises are turnkey businesses, and they cover everything from food service to travel agencies to in-home nursing care to environmental waste cleanup. Almost anything you can name, there's a franchise out there for it.
Mm-hmm.
They have a proven business model. They'll often lend you some of the money to actually start the business. They've got a footprint that may or may not be proven, and you can do some due diligence on them because the Small Business Administration website publishes a list of their loans to franchises with the highest failure rates. So if you go to SBA.gov, there's a list on there that tells you which franchises have the highest failure rates. And the last time I looked, the ones with the highest failure rates were gourmet ice cream franchises. Where they like mix the M&Ms in like a cold
Yeah.
marble
Yeah.
slab or something, and they want you to pay $12 for that ice cream cone. Incredibly, those have very high failure rates.
I thought you were going to say restaurants, but I guess it's kind of in the same vein, isn't it?
Well, in that case, it is. That just happened to be something that I looked up. But yeah, I mean, restaurants generally have a very high failure rate. It's a brutal business. You need at least 3 locations to really make significant money. You want to spend the rest of your life toiling over one Subway store. I've never met anybody that got rich owning one franchise location. You gotta be in it to at least get to 3 franchises so you can start to really scale. But there are consultants out there that will help you find what the right franchise for you based on your psychological profile, how much time you can put into the business, where your own areas of expertise lie. And I think that is worthy of consideration in a lot of these cases.
Can you tell the audience, can you tell our over 50 TV audience some of the opportunities or where you believe the greatest opportunities will be for being self-employed? Can you talk about that at all? Speak on that?
Oh yeah, that's easy. Um, Anything having to do with home maintenance, elder care, in-home healthcare, those are going to absolutely explode. Especially if Social Security gets touched, which
Hmm.
the Trump administration says he's not going to, but we'll see. I think a lot of us are holding our breath on that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, the only thing holding businesses like those back is the ability to find staffing for them.
Hmm.
So if you're the kind of person that can attract workers, that can make workers want to work for you, basically, the demand is going to be out there. The demographics are inescapable. Math is a harsh mistress,
Hmm.
and the math is that there are going to be more over 50s than less over time, and there are going to be more over 70s. There are going to be more over 90s. There are going to be more centenarians, but you know, I'm in pretty good shape. When I'm 90, I'm not mowing a lawn, right? And even
No,
if I'm
probably
in
not.
relatively good health, I'm still going to need help around the house and getting upstairs, and and there's going to be tremendous demand for those kinds of businesses. Anything in healthcare, America is an enormous consumer of healthcare. Um, uh, for reasons I'm not going to discuss on this program. That's not the theme,
Hmm.
but there's no doubt about it. Americans consume a lot of healthcare, and again, as we age, we tend to consume more, not less.
Can you give us some advice? Somebody who is over 50 years old, who is not sure if what steps they want to take for their future, but they know they don't want to work for someone else. They're thinking about buying a business, not sure if it's for them. Anything you would tell them if you sat down with them face to face?
Sure. So the first thing is I turn age into a strength. We're given all kinds of feedback from society that when you reach a certain age that things are over, get out of the way for young people, et cetera, et cetera. And and when I was young, the expectation was when you were 55, you maybe had 20 years of life left.
Hmm.
That's not the case anymore. I knock on wood. I fully expect to reach 90 if I take care of myself.
Yeah.
And my parents, well, they're 80 and they're not slowing down at all. So, you know, don't think of it as a 10 to 15-year exercise anymore. Think of it as the next chapter, 30 to 40 years potentially. So with that in mind, I think a couple of things are extremely important. One, use your age as a strength,
Hmm.
which is your network, your capital, your knowledge and wisdom, right? Capitalize on that. That's something that a 25-year-old or even a 35-year-old is not going to have. So who do you know? Who's in your circle that could be an advisor to help you on the business? Maybe even be a co-investor with you. Take advantage of that.
Hmm.
Take advantage of the fact that you already know how to learn things. Um, uh, be choosy. Again, unless you've got a condition that you know is going to shorten your lifespan, treat it as if you do have a very long time ahead of you, which means don't rush into a decision. Be deliberate.
Hmm.
Any investment, any opportunity worth investing in today is going to be there a year from now. Anything that perishes within a year, that's a venture capital type thing that you probably is not suitable for your portfolio anyway. And the final piece of advice is um, take care of your health.
Yeah. Yeah.
And health is, and I only realized this later in my life, but but your health is a business asset. When you're not healthy, you can't focus on the business. You don't have the energy. You don't have the focus. You don't have the concentration, the vitality. People can take advantage of you. You shorten the runway, and the longer the runway you have for a business, the more likely it is to be successful. Make being healthy part of your job, because it really is going to impact your financial outcome. I'm convinced.
Well, there you go. I hope you found this interview, my interview with Mike Blake, as helpful as I did. I think the guy's just amazing. I've learned a lot about business from him. If you want to reach out to Mike, if you want to contact him, well, there's a link to his website in the description box of this video. And if you're somebody out there who's thinking about how to boost your income before or maybe even during retirement, well, a side hustle might be exactly what you need. And for that, be sure to subscribe to my Side Hustle Rules YouTube channel, where we show you real ways to earn more so you can retire smarter. Now, if you want some personal help building a business, maybe a side hustle, well, then go ahead and book a one-on-one consulting session with me. I've got a link in the description box so you can do just that. Well, that is it for today. I'm going to see you in the next video. Until then, stay sharp, stay informed, and above all, stay empowered. Have a great day, everybody.